Hey there, this is Lush, and today we're going to explore Vampire the Masquerade V20 Edition. Topic of request, how to build a sheet that is powerful as well as fun to play. Well, the very first thing you're going to want to do is talk to your storyteller. You want to find out what sort of game you're going to be playing in. Are you neonates? Are you elders? Are you playing in the Cam, Anarch, or Sabbat game? And does the storyteller have any issues with 4 and 5s? And to help understand what 1 through 5 means in a dot system, here are some examples. With a 1, for example, in intelligence, these are your Hodors. They're simple people. They may not necessarily be stupid, but they are certainly lacking. They're not playing with a full deck. 2s are average people. People like you and me. As much as we like to think ourselves special, ultimately these are the average folks. It's what a lot of humans are going to have in their stats just to start out with. When it comes down to it, 3s, these are where people start to distinguish themselves. 3 is someone of advanced skill. Think a college football player. Think someone who is an MMA fighter. They've trained for a long time. They have a decade or more of experience in their chosen field. They stand above everybody else. A 4 is someone who is exceptional. These are world-ranked people, athletes, performers, the best in the country. If you think of the Olympics, these are the people that podium, gold, silver, bronze. These are incredible people. At 5, these people are, by one word, unique. If you think of a chosen field, activity, something, and there's a single name that comes to mind, that is your representation of what a 5 is. They're rare. More often than not, when you're playing a vampire character, it's not an average Joe. Vampires are selected because they are special. Or more specifically, the people who are turned into vampires are selected because they're special. The average Joe concept is a story you can tell, but it's not the focus of what we're going to be talking about today. When it comes to power scale, it's important to understand that it's different in White Wolf systems than, let's say, D&D or an MMO like World of Warcraft. In many of those games, there's a level up system where you were one level and then you're the next. There's a jump in power scale. You just become better at what you do in a broad sense. In White Wolf, and more specifically Vampire, you gain XP because the stories translate over a course of years, decades, or even centuries sometimes. The XP comes in more slowly. Even if the game is played on a weekly or monthly scale, whether it's a tabletop or a LARP, you can expect to see your character develop slowly in a few areas, rather than overall becoming better instantly in a lot of areas. Getting down to actually building the character. Well, the starting dots you're going to be playing with are going to be some of your most important and the basis of where all of your power comes from. XP is super important, and it's also imperative that you ask your storyteller if you're going to start with XP and how much. Depending on how much or if will help determine where you're placing your starting dots. We're going to assume for this video that there are or is some XP, whether it's 10, 25, 50, whatever it is. As long as there's some, that's the expectation here. When it comes to attributes, if your storyteller has no issues with 4s and 5s, you want to take advantage of that when you can. Even in your tertiary, where you only have 3 dots to play with on typical, you want to go dumping all 3 dots into one of those attributes. So let's say it's your physical category, and you want to be a lithe vampire, someone who's maybe a thief or an artiste. Having Strength 1, Dex 4, where you're putting those 3 points, and Stamina 1 is the most optimal use of those points. That XP will come in later, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. From there, we go down to your abilities. Your abilities, there are 3 numbers that matter here: 0, 1, and 3. Spending 2 dots into an ability is simply just a waste of points. That doesn't mean you'll never have just a 2, but that's where XP comes in later. The reason why is 1 dot opens it up, and 3 dots is typically the most it's the most you can put into it, but it's also you want to reserve those 3 dots for abilities you're looking to raise to 4s later. If you're probably not going to raise it to a 4, just take those other 2 dots, leave a 1, and open up another skill. It's just more efficient that way. Moving on from abilities, backgrounds are some of the most powerful dots on your sheet. But you want to make sure you talk with your storyteller. Their interpretation of how some backgrounds work, or some backgrounds that just may not be available, will definitely help you make this choice as which points you want to put where. Key backgrounds I would encourage you to speak with them on are retainers, influence, resources, and allies. Can be almost game-breaking in their power. At the same time, even if your storyteller feels that they are too powerful or they feel that they're inconsequential, so long as they're not planning to dismiss these backgrounds, being that they are exceptional in their power, an exceptional power that's nerfed is simply just a good power, and we're still looking to go with good. If feeding is going to be imperative in your game or difficult, you might also want to look into backgrounds like domain and fame. Both of them typically have perks that help you feed, and without blood, you're just a terrible vampire. I know it always comes down to in backgrounds people ask about status and generation. They are power stats, but you can play a powerful character that has no status and is 13th gen. Do not think you need either of those to be a powerful character. In all realism, both of those are stats you can raise in-game, either through politicking or eating your way to power, though you're likely to lose your character eating your way to power unless you're clever. Moving on from backgrounds, we're looking at virtues. Virtues develop into humanity and willpower, and so they're intrinsically tied with each other. You want to think about where you place your dots in virtues, because they're going to affect where those other two start, and what sort of freebie choices you're going to end up with later. I would always recommend going a 1-4-5 rating in your virtues, simply because of it's a powerful way to start. That being said, if you want to have a concept that is stronger in humanity, you want to play up the humanizing vampire, or you want to try to rush for that Golconda, you might want to spread those points around otherwise. But virtues are important to your character. They're a resistance stat, they help mitigate a lot of factors. If you have low virtues, you're going to have a bad time. Humanity and willpower, again, they're defensive stats for the most part. They either prevent you from being out of game for a long time due to torpor, they prevent certain powers from being used on you, or at least lower the chances that they'll be exceptionally successful. They're not things to be ignored. They're important parts of your character. Moving on from that, you want to look at merits and flaws. You want to look at them before freebies, because I would encourage everyone to take the maximum number of points of flaws that their storyteller allows. That may be 7, which is the common core. It may be 5, maybe 10. Talk to your storyteller, find out what it is. But I would definitely discourage you from taking flaws that you think you can avoid. If you take a flaw that isn't going to affect you, or that you've thought of a way to get around of, don't take it. Don't be that guy. Don't hurt your reputation with the storyteller or other players. An example, I knew a guy that took phobia 2 cans in a game set in Russia, just because he would never encounter it. Well, lo and behold, the storyteller decided to make the main adversary and his entire gang the Toucan gang, and this guy had a weird fetish for collecting toucans. That character was almost useless the entire game because he tried to skirt the system. Not every storyteller is going to be like that, but you don't want to build that reputation in your social group. When it comes to freebies, these are the magic of your power sheet. Throughout all of what we've gone through before, this is where you start spending freebies on abilities, backgrounds, willpower. Willpower is one especially. But where do you spend your freebies most efficiently? Well, if you look at any dot and you find out how much XP that dot would be worth to raise, if you convert that and look at how many freebies that is worth, so long as it equates to more than 2.5 experience, that's a good buy. An example, it costs 2 freebies to raise an ability. If you buy the first dot in an ability, that's only worth 3 XP. Spending 2 dots on it, 2 freebies, means that each of those freebies is only worth 1.5 experience. That's a terrible waste. In opposition, if you start with Courage 5 and therefore Willpower 5, spending 1 freebie on Willpower 6, that is a 5 XP value freebie. If you can buy your Willpower up to 7, 8, 9, drop those 4 freebies. That's a lot of experience you get for free. After you've divvied up your freebies, bought merits to help sort of flush out your concept, this is where XP comes in. Now, up in attributes, let's take the example we had initially of a Strength 1, Dex 4, Stamina 1 vampire. They wanted to be exceptionally lithe, but now they can barely crush a Coke can and paper cuts are a real health risk to them. Spending 4 XP in both strength and stamina brings both of those up to 2. For 8 XP, you are now an average person. Now, if you had started and just put 222 down the board to be an average person in the first place, it would cost you 8 XP to bring your dex up to 3, and another 12 to bring it up to 4. That's 20 XP versus 8. You've saved yourself 12 XP just because you planned ahead. It's simply just that simple. From there, you want to take a look at, now that you have a sheet, a powerful sheet, how does that make you a better role player? Well, when it comes down to it, you can always build a great concept out of a good sheet. It can be very difficult to build a good sheet out of a good concept. It's an unfortunate truth. Some people are able to do it. That's more of it just sort of working out rather than it being a case of actual mathematics. When it comes down to it, vampires rarely need to go sheet to sheet. In many cases, if you're playing just a small tabletop, you'll likely be a coterie within each other, so you're not going to be fighting each other. And if it comes down to a contest between 2 vampires and combat starts, you've probably failed at vampire. You shouldn't get to that step. A lot of players, especially new players, I see this mistake happen all the time, jump to disciplines as their key modus operandi for how to build a powerful character. They want to get all the superpowers, they want to have a ton of potence, they want to get all the dominate. But realistically, a good vampire doesn't need to use their powers. An elder concept, for example, would almost rarely use their powers because they've been around so long they don't need to be a superhero. They've taken practice, they have enough backgrounds, remember these are your power stat, to ultimately be able to get whatever they need done. Your main adversary in the game is not the other vampires. More importantly, it's humanity as a whole. Humans are your adversary, and backgrounds are your best offense and defense against them. Disciplines are just the thing that help you right in the moment. They're not the thing that helps you in the long run. They're not the thing that helps you over the century. They're band-aids. If you put all of your investment into band-aids, you'll never be able to actually close a wound. Maybe let's say you actually are playing that elder concept, and so you should have some big-ticket discipline powers. Alright, maybe you do. Definitely spend XP on them rather than freebies. It's just not worth it. Even if you buy the 4th dot of a discipline with freebies, that's 7 freebies for, 15 XP? That's just not worth it. That's under 2 per. Don't do it. But elders, if you go toe-to-toe with someone and you decide, well, I have to use my discipline on this person, maybe you do, but what you're admitting to them is that you can't defeat them without superpowers. That may come back to bite you in the end, because they just need a couple other guys and then you're toast. Don't give them that satisfaction. Find a way around it. Using powers on mortals, though, I'd say have at. They are the primary antagonists, remember? But don't overdo it. More often than not, you can get away with just simple checks rather than using powers. They're the band-aid. After character generation, I would focus my XP on things that seem more relevant to the story. Do you find your character getting involved in plots that roam around the town trying to uncover various mysteries, discover clues? Put some dots into academics, occult, investigation, streetwise. If you're getting deep into politics, you might want to turn to subterfuge or empathy, etiquette and politics. Maybe someone else just seems to be getting the upper hand on you all the time, and mortals keep showing up and trying to evict you in the middle of the day. Buy more backgrounds. All in all, a powerful character is not one that simply has the most ink on their sheet. It's the character that has a story to back up why they have ink on their sheet. If you are well-rounded and you don't have to start from scratch every time you face a challenge because you've spent XP by those 0s up to 1s or those 2s now that you've had a character, these are people that actually are able to accomplish tasks. They may not do it with flying colors in every situation, but they definitely won't be a slouch. So, thank you for listening to my video today. Please like and subscribe, comment. It really helps me determine which sort of topics folks are most interested in. Message me if you have any questions about this video, or if you have suggestions, requests for others. Thank you, and stay curious.